Oh no. I always cry when I'm doing these. I have a very clear memory of when I decided to become an author. I was 11 years old and I read everything. I had read and read and read, I think, my entire children's library. And I remember deciding I was a teenager now. I was 11, I was about to turn 12, and I went to my library and I was ready for the teenager books, but there weren't any teenager books. There was one tiny little shelf and I was not very impressed by what was there. So I remember at 11 telling my mom, one day I'm gonna write the books that I wish were sitting on that shelf right now. And then I headed for the adult section and started reading from there, but I did not forget that. What motivated me to start writing is just my deep love for books. There's nothing I love more than books. As soon as I started reading, I thought that I had just stumbled upon like a treasure. I was just so happy. And as soon as I started reading, I also started writing. It just felt like the thing that was most true to who I was and the thing that interested me most. What motivates me to not give up? That's a great question. Writing is very difficult for me. It always has been. I feel like I'm very slow. I have a lot of self-doubt. It's something that I've really had to build myself up to do. I think because books are so important to me and because my readers are so important to me, I think that's the thing that keeps me from giving up. That's a really good question because I think there's pieces of me in each of them. Addie was a very special character to me. I loved how fiery she was and how flawed she was. Liv, I see a lot of myself because I feel like as a teenager I spent a lot of time worried about who I was and trying to hide who I was, so that aspect of myself really came up in that character. Lena is probably the most like me. I actually would say that her mother in the book, Hadley, is the character that I most identify with. When my husband read the novel, he said, "Oh, so this character is you." So I'll probably choose Lena and Hadley. Well, I will just have to make those up right now because maybe I decided. Okay, so let's say that Lena was born in, let's say January. Where she was born, January would have been maybe a cold and kind of like darker time. And I think that she was really a symbol of hope for her mother. So I'm gonna put her in January so that her birth was something really special. Addie is definitely a summer birthday. She's a little bit younger. And I think she's so vivacious and loves to be outdoors, so summer would be when she's born. And then Liv, let's put her in fall. So let's say her birthday is in October. Yes, I did. The main character in Love and Gelato, Lena, I had a friend who grew up in the American Cemetery of Florence, and her father was the caretaker of the cemetery. And she was a runner, and she would get up in the morning and she'd go running through the headstones. So she was obviously the inspiration for that main character. I have another character in Love and Gelato who I won't say who she is, but she is actually someone who is in the public eye quite a bit in the US, and she inspired one of the characters in that novel as well. I always feel like there's a little bit of my husband in all of the love interest as well. We started dating as teenagers, so a little bit of him always shows up. Love and Luck was my hardest to write, definitely. There's something called the second book curse that a lot of writers have talked about. Basically, when you have a book that comes out that's successful, people don't always assume that you'll write a second book, but if your first book does well, they want a new one right away. But the problem is that it took, maybe 7 to 10 years to write that first one, and now you're supposed to know what you're doing right away. So Love and Luck was very challenging for me. I think when I wrote my first novel, it was just me in the room, and now I knew what editors sounded like and what critics sounded like and what people online commenting sounded like, and it was really difficult to get past all all those voices that I knew would be there. It was also a very challenging moment in my life. I just had a baby, and it definitely took a lot of courage for me to continue writing that book, and I feel very proud of it because of that. Every one of these stories has been through so many evolutions. I think there's probably been like 4 to 6 versions of Love and Gelato. Love and Luck took me a long time to figure out. Love and Olives, I wrote 2 separate books. So for me, it's definitely a process. I always wish that I could plan out my stories beforehand, but it never works out that way for me. I have to write my way through them. So yes, I have imagined all of these stories in many different ways, but when I get to the moment when it's right, I always know that I'm there. Okay, so the inspiration for the first book being set in Italy was because of my experiences as a teenager living in Florence. It was very natural for me to write about a teenager coming of age in that setting. Ireland, I'd spent maybe just a week in Ireland on a road trip. And it was someplace that really stuck with me. I think it's so beautiful and the people are really friendly and interesting, and I really enjoyed all of the music there, and I'd always thought that it would make a great setting. So when I had my first ideas for the second novel, I knew Ireland would make a great setting. And then Greece. So by this point, I was on my 3rd book, and I knew that whatever setting I chose, I would mentally feel like I was there for at least a year or 2. When I'm writing these books, I often close my laptop and feel like, oh, that's right, I'm not in Greece or I'm not in Ireland. So I decided to pick some place that I'd never been to before and that interested me. So I did a Google search of most interesting places in Europe, and I found this beautiful bookstore on the island of Santorini, and I didn't know what my story would be, but as soon as I saw the bookstore, I knew that that would be where my novel took place. So I got an email last week from a reader who told me that she had spent about 2 years feeling very deeply lonely. So, I'm so sorry. So what she did is she took my books with her, and wherever she was, as soon as she was alone, she would start reading them, and when she got to the end, she would just start over. So she said, "Thank you for sitting with me for all these years." You know, books were something that were always there for me in very difficult moments. And the thought of being able to do that for someone else is such an honor. So this is how I feel about it. I feel a lot of things about it, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and I'm so grateful that these books have meant so much to so many people.